Good morning everybody. As I say, I'm Bob Doughty. I'm the coordinator for the steering group of the volunteers who are managing the Heritage at Risk programme in Northumberland National Park. Now we have a map of the National Park. As Tony said, it's 400 square miles, but not a square. It runs from Hadrian's Wall in the south to the Scottish border in the Cheviots in the north. So it's quite a different area. And Tony said there's 425 monuments. 75 of these are in the Otterburn Ministry of Defence training area, and these are out with the monuments that I shall be talking about. Obviously, if you go into the Otterburn training area, you're likely to be shot, blown up, shelled, or strapped by aeroplanes. So going in there, there is a certain risk. There is a dedicated archaeologist in that area who has a few volunteers, but they've all been specially trained to work there. The Forestry Commission have something. National Trust ones are primarily on the Hadrian's Wall site, the World Heritage Site of Hadrian's Wall, and again, these are out with our remit. So basically, in the National Park, there's about 300 sites which need to be looked at. I like this one. This is on the top of Dodd Hill. We're on the top of a Bronze Age cairn. Unfortunately, a passing rambler has decided to modify it to suit a lunch stop requirements out of the wind. But just after the right here, there are other Bronze Age cairns, as you will see. There's a Neolithic cairn. On there is a promontory, Iron Age hill fort. In this area, mainly behind the stones, is quite an extensive Romano-British farmstead development. And here, and I love this place, it's a medieval moated settlement. And I find it astonishing to find this thing in the middle of the park. Needless to say, there's something like 4,000 years of history just in this one area. Here's a quick montage of different sites with one of our chief enemies, the sheep, which have been rubbing themselves against the wall there and also at the bottom. In 2008, we started a programme mainly recruited from voluntary rangers. Our primary duties at that time were going out on patrol, assessing the park in its more visited areas to check that everything was okay. We had a limited success, but then, as you can see, in 2011 a project officer was appointed, and I make no bones about it. Here she is, and I'm afraid there she is, sat on the front row in front of you, Natalie. And I have to say, if it wasn't for Natalie, I would not be stood here today. That's a simple fact. Without Natalie, that would have been it. She was only there for a year. She had around 30 of us. As I say, mostly we were voluntary rangers. As you can see from the group, quite a diversity of people, of ages and sexes. And we had a flyer out to try and recruit others. But essentially, most of us came from already people who were known in the park. Natalie produced draft training modules. These extensive training modules are no longer draft. We've been using them for the last 6 years very successfully. Natalie produced a standard recording form which was to be tried out. We're still using her recording form 6 years later. I think if there's one area with hindsight you could say perhaps should have been better was the project IT system linked to the National Park system, and this is the one area, and I'll come back to it, which caused us most grief over the lifetime of the project. However, the important thing is, during the very first year of Natalie's tenure, which was the only year she was there, we surveyed 95 of those 300 sites, and that was a considerable achievement, resulting in a National Parks Award to us for the work we did. So again, the volunteers had something to show for their hard work. So the project officer funding finished shortly after Natalie left. At the same time, the National Park were recognising that volunteers were, as Tony has said, crucial to carrying out quite a number of activities in the park if it was going to promote its functions. So we formed this steering group, strategy group, and I, because I kept sticking my head above the parapet all the time, got the job of coordinator, which I've still got at the moment. I must be doing it okay because they've not got rid of me yet. So, as I said, the first issue we had was the integration of the project with the National Park IT system, and I think everybody will admit that that was not very successful. And was the reason I've got it there was it the most cause of grief for me personally, because all the volunteers were always on to me to try and get it sorted, and I can't do anything. But my other crucial role, and I'll come back to it, is maintaining up-to-date information to the volunteers. When you've got a disparate group of people from all over Northumberland doing this work, we do have annual meetings where we try and get together, but at the same time that's not possible for everybody to get together, so maintaining information is crucial. And up to the present time, since I sort of really started 2012, 2013, I think I've produced something in the order of 21 or 22 information sheets to the volunteers, so they are fully aware of what are the crucial events, what's happening, and where things are going. We managed to complete the surveys of all those 300 sites sometime during 2015, which I think was a tremendous feat on the part of the volunteers to get out. And with Chris Jones, the Historic Environment Officer for the park, we recognise now that basically the project had finished and now it was moving into a programme. I won't even use the word long term. It's a programme, as far as we can see, infinity. We're going on to infinity. And also at the same time, we started conservation activities, which is one of the, again, crucial areas that needs to happen. So, here's one of our lovely slides of Harehoff Iron Age hill fort. If I can urge all of you to eat a rabbit pie a week, this will go some way to removing this problem. But this was an example of collaboration between volunteers, some of them were seen working here on the site, and having to spend money on commercial people, because as volunteers we couldn't have managed it all ourselves. It did need commercial input to help. And that's the result. All those bunnies have gone, it's fully protected, and Harehoff Hill Fort is now back to its original pristine condition. As I said, the main issue that we've had over the time of the project has been IT. And we really were tearing our hair out as we were going to really sort this one out. And I have to confess, I am a technological illiterate person, and somebody said, well, we'll try Dropbox. Was that the box that dropped from somewhere? I have no idea. But the Dropbox has been our saviour, without a shadow of doubt. It's been our saviour, because now all the reports of those 300 sites are on Dropbox. It means the volunteers can actually get in there, look at any site they want to go to, and get a full report out of the standard form that Natalie produced with photographs, and they know precisely what they're going to look at if they go out there. The one thing I really would like to claim a little bit of immodest credit for was my suggestion, now we were moving, recognising the long term, was that we should reallocate all those 300 sites by farms to individual volunteer surveys, so that everybody had their own patch. So when they went onto their patch, they knew the area intimately. And also they could begin to develop working relationships with the farmers, the shepherds, gamekeepers who were responsible for that site. So that, I think, was my sort of, gosh, I didn't do this. But they all said, yeah, it's fine. I said, but, you know, shall we have a committee to do this? And one of the volunteers said, Bob, just do it. And we'll go with it. So I became a benign dictator. A very benign dictator. And it went very well. Everybody accepted that. There were one or two suggestions, mainly on the grounds of, I think it would be easier if I did that one rather than this one, and if I swap it, that would be okay, will it? I said, fine. And that's the way it's worked. So now we've got a long-term view of the volunteers can see precisely where they're going and what they're going to do. The other important thing is, in the past, the frailties of the IT system was shown up by the amount of data it could handle, in particular photographs. And unfortunately, quite a lot of us, me included, didn't recognise the fact that you could actually take photographs which didn't have to be top quality. They didn't have to be magazine perfect. You could take a reasonable photograph which took up a lot less space on your storage system than you needed. And so because that was the other big issue, was storage. The other thing is, some of our volunteers were very keen, and particularly the elderly couple that you saw, they loved to go out and producing reports. Really, unfortunately, most of the sites they were going to were classed as A. They were okay. We didn't need an annual report or less than an annual report on them. So we have now sort of moved into an area, again with this reallocation of sites, that they should go to sites which are high risk. In other words, really in trouble, at least once a year to monitor them. Sites which are at medium risk every 3 years, and the low risk sites 5 years. No more needed. But the point is, now they've got their own patches, they don't need to produce formal reports on the low grade ones, because they're probably walking past them on their way to go and survey a high grade site. So they can just look and say, it's fine. We don't need to think about that anymore, on we go. So this local knowledge of sites is very important, and it is saving us a lot of work, because putting it in and analysing it all is important. The other thing that we've had a little setback on is the use of drones. We have about 20 odd of the sites are quite difficult to identify on the ground. One of our volunteers had his own drone. He was a very proficient drone user, and we had him earmarked. Unfortunately, he had family problems, and he's had to withdraw. But we've just got another volunteer back in again for using drones. So we have a number of sites which are difficult to see on the ground, but which we will be using drones for. So all in all, everybody really now is comfortable with where they're going, they're comfortable with the sites they've got to see, and so on. Now, to talk on our other deadliest enemy, bracken. As you can see, that hillside is absolutely covered in bracken, and that's just round the corner from that first slide I showed you, which had all the other sites in. So bracken is very important there. That's a start. They're bracken bashing, and at the end of the day we have a Bronze Age round cairn, which before the bracken was bashed was not visible. But it's important, of course, that the way you treat it is to make sure you don't damage the monument in any way as well. So these things are there, they're sitting. I don't want to get into political debate about the European Union, but it did withdraw authority for using, I think I refer to it as Azulan, which is a bracken killer. They withdrew permission, but I think under special license now people may be able to use it again, because obviously we couldn't hope to cover that hillside physically removing it, so spraying is the only option. It's not an option in everywhere, because one of our premier sites at Ingram Valley, Ingram Farm, has got a multitude of sites on there, but that farm is now going organic, which means again that spraying is not an option. So again, you have to consider manually removing the bracken, because that is, otherwise you will compromise their status. That's another one, and a slightly different view of it again later after it's been removed. That's a good one, isn't it? Nice bit of gorse there. And there's the volunteers clearing from a Romano-British house underneath it. So this is survey work being undertaken, identifying a site really at risk, which then has to have major conservation work done on it. And just a final shot, sorry, not the final shot, of a Neolithic long cairn. And again, you can see, although it's been sprayed in the middle, it was still the fact that bracken was starting to creep back in and destroy it. So again, you've got to do it. The big point about this is that obviously this work could not have been done without the team of volunteers to do it. There's no way paid staff, you'd have to employ quite a lot of people to do all this. So volunteers are absolutely essential to work as a team to do this. Again, anticipating future developments via particularly information technology ones is crucial, and information dissemination is the other key. A slight word of caution: the current volunteers mainly are from the lucky generation. I'm a lucky man. I hate to say, but I'm coming up to 74, and I've been retired 18 years with good pension. So I've had the time, and I've had enough money not to worry about money, so I can go out and do it. And quite a good number of the volunteers fall into that category. So maintenance of the volunteer pool is essential. We can't go on forever. At some point in time, we're going to have to give it up. The issue that we've got is, do we go out with a blast and try and recruit a load of volunteers? But I am dead against that, because we could not manage, say, even 10 people coming in en masse wanting to be volunteers. It would be very difficult, to get them incorporated as teams into this, but also it would mean splitting up the areas that we've already allocated to volunteers and where they're working. So what is happening, fortunately, is that people who are currently volunteers are bringing a friend, somebody who's, oh, I'd like to do that. And this is important in a number of ways. For example, two of our volunteers who've been doing it for a long time, one of them has been suffering quite ill health, which has restricted his ability to get out, but they've managed to bring in another of their friends who's joining them. So it's by this steady recruitment in that you get the balance of the volunteer numbers with the workload. There's only so much we can give them. So in a sense, you can have too many volunteers. If they haven't got work to do, they haven't got jobs to do, they become dissatisfied and they will leave. Just another example, perhaps Chris can tell you more about that one, but that is a classic case of erosion which needs to be had at Dinsdale in the Upper Coquet Valley. All in all, from my point of view, the project and the program has been a highly satisfactory, highly pleasant experience, very rewarding, and I'm sure all my volunteers team, not my volunteers, all the volunteer team would say the same. But I just reiterate again, it wouldn't have happened without the drive and the foresightedness of Natalie to produce the documentation that's underpinned the success of this project from the word go. Thank you very much.